Hi everyone!
Welcome to another development update for Profane. I am Saramandes, Committee Manager here at Insane, and today with me is Diego, Bunny Joker, our CEO. And here is Pixel, our Head of Game Design. We're going to dive into the roadmap, what we're working on, how it turned out, and have a little chat about the features. And before we go into more details about what we are going to discuss, a quick note that the things marked as ready on the roadmap do not mean that they are final. They are ready for the version we want right now. So the first topic, everyone, is regions. Let's talk a little bit about regions. D, tell us what we have so far regarding regions.
We have been working on two main things for now. One is the formation of a region, including its artistic side and level design, the integration, the atmosphere, and the biome that a region represents. The other part is where you can place more than one region on the same game world map. Many games are starting to adopt a similar approach now. Ours is a bit more humble. We are not going to try to make anything that is similar, but we want to ensure that all the regions of Profane, all the servers of Profane, are hosting a region that is part of the same world. So, this is what we are currently achieving, a world map with interconnected regions.
Pixel, how do the new connections and transitions between regions improve the overall player experience?
Well, until now we only had one region in the game where all players during the tests entered that same map in that same region, always experiencing the same thing. So having new regions now gives us the opportunity to start testing levels.
It's different, the player transitioning between these regions and experiencing what it's like to arrive in a new region, what it's like to leave your own region, and more. That's why it's very important.
Perfect. Very cool. And why is the practical and functional process of creating regions so crucial at this stage we are in?
Basically, because of how Profane is structured in regions, we need to be very, very agile when it comes to creating a new region in Profane. So, both adding and removing regions from the game has to be a very smooth process within our pipeline. So it is important that we are already testing this now, so that when we need to scale the game, we can do it quickly.
Dai, with the two new regions, now 100% ready, can you give a little spoiler about what players can expect to find when they go to these regions?
Definitely. Yes. I think the main thing is for us to be able to see in this first stage the difference in how the map is forming in the two regions. Because there are many things that are based on player decisions which will alter the map. So even if they start somewhat similar to each other, we can see a difference, just like we saw in the pre-alpha, in the very culture of the players within the same region. So this alone already creates a significant differentiator to be evaluated. But we will also be segregating types of resources that are more abundant in one and less in the other. This will also help with trade routes. And the fact that what is more abundant in one region is scarcer in another also creates an effect on the economy. So there is all of this to be tested with this delivery.
So now let's talk about NPCs. This is an important topic. Players haven't experienced NPCs much in the tests. They've only seen a little bit. We already have some news on that. What can players expect from the upcoming NPCs they will encounter during the tests?
First implementation of the AI of our NPCs, then we started to implement their behaviors within the world. We currently have 3 basic different behaviors within our NPCs, and from this point on, we will be able to work on more specific behaviors for each of the NPCs as we continue to add more NPCs. Well, so this first version is already very important for us to test in order to understand how to evolve from it as well.
We see that some NPC behaviors are 90% ready in the roadmap. What is still needed for refinement?
Most of the deliveries we are making now are at an initial quality level. So there are still refinements that we want to put off for later once we validate this content. So NPCs go through a lot of that, right? We won't have much work to put a well-defined version of an NPC before we've placed it in the game, tested it with the community, and received feedback. Because it may be that his appearance changes, it may be that his skills and behavior change. So we do it in a somewhat quick way, so to speak, test it. And as we start to like the results, we also indeed make them more beautiful. So you will see that the visual of these NPCs already has a new proposal compared to what was in testing until now. But there is still refinement to be done on them.
Perfect. There we have 6 encounters that we just delivered in the roadmap. Pixel, how do these encounters still deliver the excitement that players are looking for?
Well, Encounters in Profane are something that we will be constantly adding as content for the game, as it is what the player will be frequently experiencing in the world. So these first 6 that we made are our initial test to also understand how complex an encounter needs to be, how much work we need to put in to create an encounter. So there will be simpler encounters and there will be more complex encounters. So now that we've completed these first 6, we'll be able to build on them to prevent the player from repeating the content too much, right? The more repetition the player has.
I'm excited to see this happen. The third topic that we've already reached 100% on, and we're really happy to see that. Can you tell us a little more about what this means for the players?
Yes, which well summarized means that we believe our current system is complete in terms of systems. We have already achieved what we were expecting it to reach as a system, and we already have plenty of content within it, many recipes. There are many things in there. So from our perspective now, what we have for crafting is just one after that, right? What is more content and improvements, new enhancements that we might end up bringing, or additional features within crafting.
What exactly improvements are planned for the crafting system in the upcoming updates?
So I think that there are many things that are still in the testing phase. The converters, for example, if you look at their UI, it is still very systemic. But aside from that, we have already made improvements to the UI after testing with players. So we have recipe icons appearing on the screen, as well as the crafting screen itself. We have an integration with the part that shows the recipe with the part that displays the crafting list. Now, together, all of this through user feedback, changes have been made to the tracking system for recipes. A lot is being done based on interaction with the community and feedback testing. Presents it to them, conducts tests, receives feedback, makes a change until we reach an ideal moment. So that's what we will be focusing on from now on. We know that there are still many mechanics that can be improved to make them more user-friendly for those who enjoy crafting and want to focus on the crafting aspect within the game. We are sure that there are many things that can be made even more practical, so this is part of our focus at the moment.
Wonderful. Let's talk about skills then. We have made significant progress in skills, and I know everyone will be eager to hear about the progress on this. We currently have 14 active skills and 2 passive skills. Pixel, what exactly is their role in shaping player strategy, and how does the acquisition of skills influence the skills that we have?
Well, I think our main goal with these 14 skills was to extensively test our creation of new skills and to experiment with different mechanics and strategies within that. So I think this is our first glimpse of a skills package that we would be delivering, allowing players to create varied builds with them. The role of acquiring skills comes into play because this is part of a new content for the player, where the player will no longer have all the skills locked, will have to collect them while exploring the world. So this will change the way players interact with the skills, because not everyone will have all the skills and you can't force yourself to have one skill or another. You end up waiting for chance to happen.
And D, the passive skills are about 50% complete. Can you provide a bit more detail about what the challenges are, the fixes, and what the plans are to complete these passive skills?
Yes, I think so. We actually set it at 50%, especially because we have just created systems that support passive skills, and we ended up creating a very low volume of passive skills with a variation so different from active skills that we are already managing to find a greater variation. The passive skills are still relatively simple, but in any case, we are indeed concerned about how they will compete in the same space in the player's build. The player can have 8 skills, and among these, the passive skills will also occupy these slots. We tried to make them interesting enough for your build, even while creating only a few, since we don't want to test too much, right? There are many players who we know want to have a build that isn't overloaded, right? 8 active skills can be a bit overwhelming. So we are starting to want to test this early on. That's why we prioritize them and are already implementing some. But I think the challenges are really just because our system for creating status effects and other things that are more related to passive skills is still very embryonic, right? But it's already there for testing.
We mentioned that we are still working on VFX for the elemental skills, right? How crucial are these visual and functional aspects for the game experience, Pixel?
When it comes to VFX for the skills, we always want to bring, I think, 2 main things, which are clarity in what is happening. So we always try to work on ensuring that the player understands what is happening when they use that skill. Within that, we add some design guidelines, such as having cast time, so players have reaction time to target another player. A skill and the VFX have a big influence on this, right? And along with that, even animations. Animations are something we just started to touch on a bit now within skills, but we are at a point where we will begin to change the animations of the skills so that they make more sense with the skill you are using as well, right? All of this contributes to the player having a good experience using the skills, right? It should be impactful for them to use that skill, and they should also have clarity about what is happening both to themselves and to those who are watching them use that skill.
Let's talk about proficiencies a little bit then. We also made good progress, some cuts. What can you share about the current state of proficiency?
At this first moment, we are delivering a version of the proficiencies that still relies heavily on content. What are the contents of the proficiencies? These are the perks. Unlike how it was in the pre-alpha, where each proficiency evolved in only one way, with one type of action. Now the proficiencies have various types of different actions you can take to earn each of the perks that proficiency grants you. It's as if they are passive abilities related to that proficiency that you don't need to activate. They accompany your character the entire time. So, we are at a point where the proficiency system already exists. Now we need to start incorporating everything into it. There are only a few. We need to add more so that it reaches the evolutionary level we want for the proficiency system.
Right? And they are at 10%. Pixel, how does this impact your immediate gaming experience, right? What is the timeline for the completion of this feature?
Proficiency is the macro progression of the player in the game, so the impact of having or not having it is significant. What we will have today will indeed already be a completely different experience from what we had in the last tests. So even though we still have a lot to implement within proficiencies, many different perks we want to create, and various rewards we want to have, we are at least building an initial foundation for players to start having progression within it. This will also allow us to begin balancing how long it will take to unlock the recipes, which recipes will unlock in which order, and that sort of thing. Therefore, it is very important for us to deliver something soon. In order to test and start balancing the Boras with the feedback from the community, the plan is to complete this by the end of the year. A good part of this is now in the hands of GD, so we are already implementing these perks into the game to deliver them to players as soon as possible. Stay tuned for updates.
Wonderful. Regarding NPC factions, this has always been a topic that has greatly interested players when we talk about it, and we have some cool updates here on the roadmap. Which one would you say is the most impactful at the moment?
Certainly, what is most impactful is the contribution of players to the evolution of the faction, but also the fact that for the first time, any NPC city you see within the game is dynamic. It is not something that was there, generated along with the map. Rather, it is something that can be contributed to or destroyed by the players, which makes the presence of the factions within the world something that is related to power. So if a guild is very allied with a faction, it may be gaining benefits from that, or another guild may be using the defense of a faction to gain an advantage over another that is trying to dominate a region. So many dynamic elements are behind the functioning of factions in Profane.
And the faction villages can grow. Players can now help in this process as well. How is this working at the moment, Pix?
Well, basically every faction has a contract board. It's a system of the factions where players can make contracts for that faction to help it. Contracts provide both reputation for the player with that faction and help it to build a new project for the city, allowing the faction to evolve. This Boras always has 2 projects underway at the same time, and players can choose which contract to take to help which project. They can decide if they want to help build a guard tent or a market. In this way, the player can influence how this faction evolves because only one of the projects will be completed and the completed project will be built by the faction.
We also mentioned that these factions can build wonders. What would these wonders be, Pix?
This would be the last construction, so to speak, the most important one for that faction, which truly defines the direction that faction took at the end of the creation of all the projects. So they are always very specific constructions within the world, which will significantly change the visual perception of how that faction is observed in the world. People have an arena, so one of the wonders we have is a large arena that players can use when it is built. They don't have a systemic impact on the game yet, but it's something we will want to add, right? Like when players decide whether they will build which wonder for that faction, there is a reason for them to choose one or the other, right? Today it's more visual, but we will also add some systemic elements within that.
Very cool. So, before we wrap up here, guys, I just want to ask a very important question, which is, do we have plans for testing? How are those things going? For sure, I think that all the closure, even the scope reduction we made for this roadmap is because we really value user testing.
The last ones we did were definitely worth it. We received a lot of good feedback. So thank you everyone who participated. We created a forum and received various feedback from different aspects of the game, which greatly contributed to the development of what we have done so far up to this delivery of the roadmap. So we are definitely valuing it. This version, this roadmap that we just presented here, is ready. However, we know that after spending so much time without reading to add new features, new mechanics, and new content, some things come out a bit rushed, and we need to refine them a little. So we are already in the second week, just working on this version that we will put into testing. It's almost done. There are a few minor issues that are still causing a spam, but once everything is ready, the tests will begin. So we are really right at the moment now. Perfect.
Guys, this is all about our roadmap now. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Pixel, for participating and bringing your feedback to the community. I hope it has become clearer for you where we are, what we are doing, and what the next steps are. Thank you for following us. Feel free to leave any doubts or questions here in the comments or come to our Discord to chat with us more closely. Thank you for following us. Stay tuned because soon there will be another nice little video for you. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.